Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates. Rock Hudson was the ultimate Hollywood heartthrob of the 1950s, tall, impossibly handsome, and the star of romantic blockbusters like Magnificent Obsession and Pillow Talk. But behind the scenes, Hudson was living a double life, one carefully orchestrated by the studio system that controlled his every move, and nothing exemplified that more than his marriage to Phyllis Gates. In November of 1955, Hudson shocked even his closest friends by proposing to Gates, his agent's secretary. The wedding was a quiet affair in Santa Barbara, attended only by Hudson's agent, Henry Wilson, and a handful of others. But the secrecy didn't last long. Minutes after the ceremony, Wilson tipped off Hollywood gossip columnists. The message was clear. Rock Hudson was officially off the market, and the whispers about his personal life could be put to rest. For the next 3 years, Hudson and Gates played the roles of husband and wife, but cracks formed almost immediately. Gates later claimed she had been deeply in love, telling journalist Sarah Davidson, "I thought he would be a wonderful husband. He was charming, his career was red hot, he was gorgeous. How many women would have said no?" But privately, their relationship was fraught with tension, much of it revolving around Hudson's sexuality, an open secret in Hollywood. One particularly revealing moment came when Gates allegedly burned a pile of tight jeans Hudson had brought home, clothes he had never worn before. According to her memoir, My Husband, Rock Hudson, this led to an explosive argument, with Hudson's fury surfacing whenever his personal life was questioned. By 1958, their marriage was over. Years later, controversy erupted when private investigator Fred Otash's secret files were made public in 2013. Among them was a recorded conversation in which Gates confronted Hudson directly, asking, "You're great speed with me sexually. Are you that fast with boys?" The tape reignited speculation. Had Gates truly been unaware, or had she played along for financial security? Some insiders believe she had always known, but the truth remains murky. What's undeniable is that Hudson's marriage was a product of its time. A desperate attempt to protect the career of a man who, in 1950s Hollywood, could never have been openly himself. Judy Garland and Vincente Minnelli. Judy Garland was Hollywood's golden girl, but behind the glittering facade, her marriage to Vincente Minnelli was anything but a fairy tale. When they wed in June of 1945, Garland was at the peak of her career, and Minnelli had just directed her in Meet Me in St. Louis, a film that cemented her star power. But some believe their union wasn't about love, it was about optics. Minnelli, an acclaimed director with a keen eye for technicolor spectacle, was known in certain circles for his relationships with men, both before and after his marriage to Garland. In the rigid Hollywood studio system of the 1940s, being openly gay was out of the question, especially for someone working under MGM's watchful eye. The studio had a vested interest in keeping its biggest stars marketable, and a traditional marriage was the perfect shield against rumors. Garland, meanwhile, had spent her life under MGM's control. From a young age, she was molded into the ideal leading lady, with every aspect of her image carefully curated. But behind the scenes, she struggled with addiction and mental health battles, exacerbated by the studio's relentless demands. According to biographer Gerald Clark, Garland was deeply insecure and sought stability, something a marriage, even if orchestrated, might have promised. Their daughter, Liza Minnelli, was born in 1946, but the marriage itself was unraveling. Garland's emotional turmoil and Minnelli's personal life made for a fragile union, and by 1951 it was over. Some speculate that Minnelli's relationships with men played a role in the split, though Garland's own struggles with substance use and depression were also factors. In the end, their marriage was another Hollywood illusion, one crafted for the cameras but unable to withstand reality. Rudolph Valentino and Gene Acker. Rudolph Valentino was the ultimate heartthrob of the silent film era, a swoon-worthy star with smoldering looks and a reputation as Hollywood's great lover. But his first marriage? A disaster from the very start. On November 6, 1919, Valentino wed actress Gene Acker in what seemed like a whirlwind romance. The truth? Acker had deep regrets before the ink on the marriage certificate was even dry. That night, she locked Valentino out of their hotel room, leaving him stranded in the hallway. The marriage was never consummated. Acker, a rising silent film actress, had secretly been in love with another woman, rumored to be the cabaret performer Alla Nazimova, an influential figure in Hollywood's underground LGBTQ+ scene. Marrying Valentino was a mistake she realized instantly. Within months, the couple separated, though they remained legally married until their divorce was finalized in 1922. For Valentino, the failed marriage was the first of many public scandals. His next marriage, to costume designer Natasha Rambova, was equally controversial. Some speculate it was more of a business arrangement than a love match, designed to bolster their Hollywood careers. At the time, rumors swirled about Valentino's own sexuality, whispers that only grew louder after his death in 1926. Whether his marriages were genuine or simply strategic, one thing was certain: Valentino's love life was as dramatic as the films that made him a legend. Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller. Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller's marriage was the kind of Hollywood spectacle that had the world watching. But was it ever real? When they wed in June 1956, it looked like a fairy tale. Monroe, the ultimate bombshell, and Miller, the Pulitzer-winning intellectual. But behind the flashbulbs, many believe this was less about love and more about reinvention. Monroe had spent years fighting for credibility in an industry that saw her as little more than a blonde stereotype. She devoured literature, studied method acting, and longed to be taken seriously. Marrying Miller, a man revered for his sharp mind and social commentary, seemed like a shortcut to legitimacy. Meanwhile, Miller, already famous, but not a household name, suddenly found himself linked to the most famous woman on the planet. The publicity was instant and overwhelming, but the cracks showed early. Monroe's struggles with anxiety and substance use deepened, and Miller, once her champion, reportedly grew disillusioned. His private journals, later revealed, painted a harsh picture. He allegedly wrote that he was embarrassed by her and questioned their marriage. Monroe found out. Friends later recalled her devastation, saying she felt utterly betrayed. By the time they divorced in January 1961, the illusion had shattered. Monroe, feeling abandoned, spiraled further, while Miller moved on quickly, marrying photographer Inge Morath just weeks after the divorce was finalized. Whether their marriage was ever real love or just a carefully curated arrangement remains up for debate, but one thing is clear: it was a union built on image, and in the end, that wasn't enough to hold it together. Cary Grant and Barbara Hutton. Cary Grant and Barbara Hutton's marriage had all the makings of a Hollywood fairy tale, except for one thing: almost no one believed it was real. When the dashing leading man wed the Woolworth heiress on July 8, 1942, the press called it a union of beauty and billions. But behind the glamour, whispers swirled. Was this a love match or a calculated arrangement? Hutton, one of the richest women in the world, had already endured a string of failed relationships and was no stranger to men drawn to her fortune. But Grant? He famously never took a dime from her. That detail alone fueled speculation. Some believed he married her to rehabilitate his image. After all, rumors about his relationships with men had followed him for years. Others saw it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. She got a charming, respectable husband, and he got a shield from Hollywood's prying eyes. Their 3-year marriage was, by most accounts, amicable but distant. They spent long stretches apart, and when they formally divorced in 1945, there was no public drama, just a quiet, polite farewell. Hutton would go on to marry and divorce 5 more times, while Grant remained one of Hollywood's most enigmatic figures, his personal life forever the subject of speculation. To this day, their marriage remains one of classic Hollywood's most debated unions. Was it love, convenience, or something in between? Anthony Perkins and Barry Berenson. Anthony Perkins was the perfect Hollywood leading man. Tall, handsome, and brooding, with a nervous energy that made him unforgettable and Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. But behind the camera, Perkins lived a double life, one shaped by the rigid, unforgiving norms of mid-century Hollywood. When he married Barry Berenson in 1973, many believed it wasn't for love but for survival. For years, Perkins had been romantically linked to men, including actor Tab Hunter, with whom he allegedly shared a secret relationship in the 1950s. At the time, being openly gay in Hollywood was career suicide. Studios controlled their stars' images with an iron grip, and any hint of homosexuality could mean the end of leading man roles. Perkins, who had spent much of his early career under the watchful eye of Paramount Pictures, was no exception. His marriage to Berenson, a model and actress, came as a shock to those who knew him best. Some saw it as a strategic move, an attempt to silence rumors and secure his career as he entered his 40s. Others believed there was genuine affection between them, even if the foundation of their marriage was complicated. Regardless of the speculation, the couple remained together for nearly 2 decades, raising 2 sons, Oz and Elvis Perkins. Despite his marriage, Perkins reportedly continued relationships with men in private. In a 1995 biography, Anthony Perkins' split image Author Charles Weinkauf detailed Perkins' struggles with his identity, noting that he had undergone years of therapy, even aversion therapy, in an attempt to change his orientation. It was a tragic reflection of the era's pressures, where even a man as talented as Perkins felt he had to suppress who he truly was. Perkins' story took an even more heartbreaking turn when he was diagnosed with AIDS in 1990. He kept his illness a secret until his death in 1992, never publicly acknowledging his sexuality. His widow, Barry Berenson, would later die tragically in the September 11th attacks, adding another layer of sorrow to their story. Was their marriage a sham? A cover-up? Or simply a complicated love story shaped by the era's constraints? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, but one thing is certain. Anthony Perkins was a man caught between his talent, his truth, and the unforgiving spotlight of Hollywood. Dorothy Dandridge and Jack Dennison. Dorothy Dandridge had already broken barriers when she became the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar in 1955. But by the time she married Jack Dennison in 1959, her career was faltering, and her personal life was unraveling. From the start, their marriage was plagued by whispers. Some claimed Dennison, a nightclub owner, was more interested in Dandridge's bank account than in her. Others alleged he was abusive behind closed doors. Financially, the marriage was a disaster. Dennison convinced Dandridge to invest in his restaurant, but the business flopped, draining her savings. By the time she filed for divorce in 1962, she was nearly broke. Worse, her career had suffered. Hollywood, already reluctant to give black actresses leading roles, had all but shut its doors on her. Dandridge's life took a tragic turn after the divorce. She struggled with financial ruin, depression, and substance-related issues. When she was found dead in her Los Angeles apartment in 1965, at just 42 years old, many speculated that her toxic marriage had been the beginning of her downfall. While the official cause was a rare embolism, some believe the stress and the heartbreak of her relationship with Dennison contributed to her decline. Dandridge's story is one of talent, triumph, and tragedy. A woman who shattered Hollywood's glass ceiling, only to be left picking up the pieces of a broken marriage and a broken dream. Tallulah Bankhead and John Emery. Tallulah Bankhead was never one to play by the rules. The Alabama-born actress with a whiskey-soaked voice and razor-sharp wit was a force of nature, on stage, on screen, and in life. By the time she married actor John Emery in 1937, she was already a Hollywood enigma, known as much for her scandalous quips as for her performances. But their marriage? It fooled no one. Bankhead had long been the subject of rumors. She was openly flirtatious with both men and women, and she never shied away from discussing her attractions. "My father warned me about men and booze," she once quipped, but he never mentioned a word about women and cocaine. That kind of candor was unheard of in the buttoned-up world of classic Hollywood, where studios meticulously controlled their stars' public images. John Emery, a suave but relatively low-profile actor, seemed an odd match for someone as uninhibited as Bankhead. The marriage lasted just 4 years, ending in divorce in 1941, and many believed it was never about love in the first place. Some speculated that it was a strategic move, an attempt to quiet whispers about Bankhead's sexuality at a time when being openly bisexual could end a career. Whether Emery was in on the arrangement or simply swept up in Bankhead's chaotic orbit is unclear, but after their split, she never married again. Instead, she doubled down on living life on her own terms, making no apologies for who she was or who she loved. Peter Lawford and Patricia Kennedy. Peter Lawford was Hollywood royalty, but his marriage to Patricia Kennedy was more than just a love story. It was a power move. When the British actor and Rat Pack member wed JFK's sister in 1954, it was seen as a mutually beneficial alliance. Lawford gained access to one of the most influential political dynasties in American history, while the Kennedys secured a direct link to Hollywood glamour. But behind the glitz, their marriage was anything but perfect. Lawford was charming, handsome, and well-connected, but he had a reputation. His womanizing and growing dependence on alcohol and drugs made him a liability in the tightly controlled Kennedy image machine. Patricia, raised in a family that valued loyalty and discretion above all, struggled with his indiscretions. By the early 60s, their relationship was unraveling. The final straw came in 1966 when Patricia filed for divorce, citing Lawford's infidelity and substance abuse. But even after their split, Lawford remained entangled with the Kennedys, and not always in ways they wanted. He was reportedly present at Marilyn Monroe's last gathering the night before her tragic passing in August 1962. Some speculate he acted as a messenger between Monroe and the Kennedys, particularly JFK and Robert Kennedy, but the truth remains murky. What's clear is that Lawford's marriage to Patricia wasn't built to last. Whether it was a calculated move or a doomed romance from the start, it became another chapter in the Kennedy family's long history of high-profile, complicated relationships. Cole Porter and Linda Lee Thomas. Cole Porter was a man of contradictions, an artist whose music dripped with romance, yet whose personal life was shaped by pragmatism. In December of 1919, he married Linda Lee Thomas, a wealthy socialite with a sharp mind and a keen understanding of the world they inhabited. By then, Porter's attraction to men was an open secret in certain circles, but in an era when being openly gay could end a career, a marriage to a woman of means offered protection. For Linda, the arrangement had its own advantages. She had endured a disastrous first marriage to an abusive husband, and with Porter, she found companionship, stability, and a life of glamour. Theirs was not a conventional love story, but it was a partnership built on mutual respect and deep affection. They traveled the world together, throwing lavish parties in Paris, Venice, and New York, rubbing shoulders with the elite. Linda was more than just a convenient spouse. She was Porter's fiercest supporter, his muse, and in many ways, his anchor. When he suffered a catastrophic horseback riding accident in 1937 that left him in constant pain, it was Linda who ensured he kept composing, even as his health deteriorated. Though their marriage was never physically intimate, it endured for 35 years until Linda's death in 1954. Porter was devastated, retreating into isolation. Some might call their union a sham, but those who knew them best saw it differently. A marriage not of passion, but of profound loyalty and understanding. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor's marriage was the kind Hollywood studios loved. Glamorous, photogenic, and according to many, completely orchestrated. When they tied the knot in 1939, Taylor was MGM's golden boy, a matinee idol with a clean-cut image. But behind the scenes, rumors swirled that his relationship with Stanwyck was less about romance and more about studio damage control. MGM had a vested interest in keeping Taylor's reputation spotless. He was a leading man in an era when any whisper of scandal, especially regarding sexuality, could derail a career. Some historians and biographers suggest that the studio arranged his marriage to Stanwyck to quash persistent rumors about his private life. Stanwyck, known for her fiercely independent nature, was also the subject of speculation regarding her own sexuality. Together, they made a perfect Hollywood power couple, on paper. But off-screen, their dynamic was unusual. Stanwyck reportedly called Taylor Jr., a nickname that hinted at a maternal rather than romantic relationship. Their interests were starkly different. Taylor loved the outdoors, hunting and fishing, while Stanwyck had little patience for such pursuits. A rare attempt at a camping trip together ended in disaster. By the late 1940s, the cracks in their marriage were impossible to ignore. When Taylor traveled to Rome in 1950 to film Quo Vadis, he was photographed leaving a brothel and openly dating a young Italian actress, Lea DeLeo. Stanwyck flew to Rome in what many saw as an effort to maintain appearances, but the marriage was effectively over. They divorced in 1951, with Stanwyck securing 15% of Taylor's earnings for the rest of his life, a financial arrangement that raised eyebrows, given that she was already wealthier than him. Was their marriage a sham? Some argue there was affection, but the overwhelming evidence suggests it was a carefully managed Hollywood illusion. Studios controlled their stars' images with an iron grip, and in Taylor and Stanwyck's case, that meant a marriage that served the industry more than the individuals in it. Janet Gaynor and Adrian. When Janet Gaynor and Adrian tied the knot in 1939, Hollywood took notice, but not for the usual reasons. Gaynor was an Oscar-winning actress, the first to ever receive the Best Actress statuette, while Adrian was MGM's legendary costume designer, the mastermind behind Dorothy's ruby slippers and The Wizard of Oz. On paper, it was a glamorous match, but behind the scenes, whispers swirled that their marriage was more about convenience than romance. Both Gaynor and Adrian were rumored to be gay, a reality that, in the rigid moral climate of Golden Age Hollywood, could have ended their careers. At the time, studios wielded immense power over their stars' personal lives, crafting images that fit the era's strict social norms. A conventional marriage provided cover, shielding them from scrutiny while allowing them to maintain their respective careers. Despite the speculation, the couple remained together for 2 decades, even raising a son, Robin. Yet their relationship was anything but traditional. Friends and insiders noted that their bond seemed more like a deep friendship than a passionate romance. After Adrian's death in 1959, Gaynor's close companionship with Broadway star Mary Martin only fueled further speculation. Though neither woman publicly confirmed a romantic relationship, their deep connection was well known within Hollywood circles. Some historians argue that Gaynor and Adrian's marriage was simply a product of its time, a strategic decision in an industry that demanded conformity. Others believe it was a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and shared ambition. Whatever the truth, their story remains one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries, a reminder of the lengths stars had to go to protect their personal lives in an era that left little room for authenticity. Vincent Price and Mary Grant. Vincent Price was the undisputed king of horror, his deep velvety voice haunting audiences in films like House of Wax and The Fly. But off-screen, his personal life was shrouded in whispers. In 1949, he married costume designer Mary Grant, and for over 2 decades, they played the part of a Hollywood power couple, raising a daughter together. Yet rumors about Price's sexuality never faded. Hollywood in the mid-20th century was a place of strict image control. Studios had a vested interest in maintaining the illusion of their stars' heterosexuality, and marriages, real or arranged, were often used as shields. Price, a man of refined tastes and a love for art and literature, was frequently the subject of speculation. Some biographers and historians suggest that his marriage to Grant may have been a cover, a carefully curated arrangement to keep scrutiny at bay. Price's daughter, Victoria Price, later acknowledged her father's fluid sexuality, stating in interviews that he had relationships with both men and women. However, during his lifetime, Price never publicly addressed these rumors. His divorce from Grant in 1973 only fueled further speculation, especially as he became increasingly vocal in his support for LGBTQ+ rights. By the 1980s, he was openly advocating for gay rights and AIDS awareness, a bold stance for a man of his era. Was Price's marriage to Grant a sham, or was it simply a complex union shaped by the pressures of the time? The truth remains elusive, but one thing is clear. Vincent Price was a man who lived within the rigid expectations of Hollywood while quietly defying them in his own way. Danny Kaye and Sylvia Fine. Danny Kaye was a man of contradictions, an entertainer who could light up a room with his comedic genius, yet whose personal life remained an enigma. In 1940, he married Sylvia Fine, a sharp-witted songwriter who not only penned many of his most famous numbers, but also managed his career with an iron grip. But was their marriage built on love, or was it a carefully orchestrated partnership? For decades, rumors swirled about Kaye's sexuality. Hollywood insiders whispered about his close relationships with men, most notably Laurence Olivier. Some biographers have speculated that Kaye and Olivier shared more than just a friendship, though definitive proof remains elusive. The speculation was fueled by their frequent time together and Olivier's own complex personal life. Meanwhile, Fine's role in Kaye's life went far beyond that of a traditional spouse. She was his manager, his creative collaborator, and some believed the architect of his public persona. Their relationship was professional, strategic, and at times distant. By the 1950s, they were living largely separate lives, though they never divorced. Some Hollywood historians argue that their union was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Kaye maintained a wholesome family man image, while Fine remained the gatekeeper of his career. Despite the whispers and the distance between them, the marriage endured for over 50 years. When Fine passed away in 1991, Kaye remained by her side in name, if not always in presence. Whether theirs was a marriage of convenience, a deep but unconventional bond, or something in between, one thing is clear: Danny Kaye and Sylvia Fine knew how to keep Hollywood guessing. Clark Gable and Kay Williams. Clark Gable had played the role of a leading man on screen for decades, but off-screen, his love life was just as carefully scripted, sometimes by the studios themselves. By the time he married Kay Williams in 1955, the King of Hollywood was a widower, his great love, Carole Lombard, having died in a tragic plane crash in 1942. But this marriage? It wasn't the grand romance of his past. Insiders whispered that it was more about comfort than passion. Gable had a history of studio-arranged relationships, a common practice in Hollywood's golden age. MGM had orchestrated his marriage to his first wife, Josephine Dillon, an acting coach who was 17 years his senior. It was less about love and more about refining his image. Later, his union with Maria Langham followed a similar pattern: convenience over chemistry. By the time he married Kay Williams, a former actress and socialite, many believed it was simply a practical decision. Gable was aging, and Williams provided companionship without drama. But was it a love story or just another Hollywood illusion? Reports from those close to the couple paint a picture of a relationship that lacked fire. Williams was seen as a stabilizing force, someone who could manage Gable's rough edges. Yet friends noted that the marriage was more about companionship than passion. Even Kay's own past hinted at a life built on reinvention. She had been married multiple times before, including to millionaire Adolf Spreckels. Then came the final act. In November 1960, Gable suffered a heart attack and died at the age of 59. Just months later, Kay gave birth to their son, John Clark Gable. The timing only fueled speculation. Was this marriage truly built on love? Or was it another well-crafted Hollywood narrative? Gable's last years remained shrouded in mystery, his final marriage a lingering question mark in the legend of the King of Hollywood. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.